Alright, for this final video, I want to talk about a group that I don't necessarily think hates Ron Paul, but just are he's so unusual and outside their experience that they don't know how to react, and that is what I like to call politicos. I don't know if there's a better term for this group because it doesn't really fit. Politicals, from what I'm going to describe, are people who make a living, work in, or are extremely involved in the political process in one capacity or another. So, for instance, a politician, their staffs, lobbyists, the pundits on TV, and the media in general, especially the media that specifically covers politics. So this wouldn't apply to, say, the Weather Channel, uh, but CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all those people. Now, uh, politicos are interesting people. They have different incentives than the rest of us. Uh, their entire point, they make their living off of the public trough, and if they do well, in order to do well, to rise in that field, they have to basically be sycophants, obedient, deceitful manipulators. And if they do it long enough, they basically become evil. They become Dick Cheney or George Bush or Barack Obama. The ones who are nicer tend not to rise as high, and they get sick of it and they stop. Anyway, politicos rarely have consistent, thought out philosophies of anything. They may have their own beliefs, but as far as their livelihood goes, it's not about that at all. It's about politics. It's about how do you manipulate people? How do you turn a political situation? It's all about gamesmanship. It's all about telling the right lie to get the right number of votes or the right appearance in the public eye. And they spend their whole lives doing this. And the result is that when somebody comes up and is consistent, regardless of the political fallout. Now, Ron Paul, I don't think you could say is completely 100% this way. He does seem to tailor his message depending on the audience. When he's talking in Iowa, he'll talk about abortion. Now, he's not lying because he honestly believes what he says about abortion, at least as far as we can tell. But when someone like Ron Paul, they look at that and it just doesn't make any sense. The formula for politics is you go and you try and get stuff for your constituents. You try and buy votes with the public purse, and that's how you do it. And how you buy them, it's either with a military base or direct subsidy or some kind of welfare or whatever. And Ron Paul explicitly doesn't do that. Now, I know there's some question because he puts in riders and bills, but then he votes no on them. So, I'll give him a pass. It could be debated, but even people like I heard Ann Coulter give him a pass on that, and she's not exactly his biggest fan. So, in any event, to them, it'd be the reason that they don't think he's going to win, and they can't even conceive it, is because they don't even have a clue. What he's doing doesn't make any sense by their logic. It would be like, you go to a baseball game, you've got the baseball players on the two teams, you've got the announcers, you got the fans. They've gone to thousands of baseball games. They know how it's played. And then Ron Paul comes on the field and starts running the wrong way around the diamond, or kicking the ball. They see it and it doesn't make any sense to them. And you can guarantee that they're not going to look at him and be like, yeah, he's going to win the World Series, which and so it's clear the analogy follows. They look at his politics and they're like, look, you're never going to get elected if you're going to be so extreme on these issues. If you're going to say that Social Security should be abolished at some point, even though he doesn't emphasize that, Social Security is like the biggest, most sacred trough thing that the politicians divvy out. So for him to even hint that he's against it is the death penalty to them. But what I think that they're miscalculating is that politics is slow to the uptake, and society has changed. Now, I'm not one to say, oh yeah, we live in libertopia now. Every American's a libertarian. Absolutely not. That's not what's happened. But it has moved in that direction some. I don't know how much. But clearly Ron Paul is much more popular and influential and by extension powerful than he ever has been. And in the primaries, that can make a big difference. It's very interesting that he can raise all this money. He has all this fame. He's acknowledged to be honest. He's acknowledged to be smart and intellectual. And yet, other people who are running who are far less famous, have far less money, have no grassroots support, they're considered, you know, noteworthy, and it's because they're playing this game, and so they understand what they're doing. You know, when they hear Rick Santorum, even though he does horrible, and nobody likes him, or Newt Gingrich, they're playing by the rules that they're so used to, and so it makes sense to them. And then there again, there's Ron, and he's doing this different stuff, and it just completely is. I don't want to say over their head like they're too dumb to understand it. That's not the case. They're just it's like a different language, you know, and so. They don't hate Ron Paul necessarily. Some of them do because some of them are going to fall into the liberal or the conservative camp, and they're going to hate him for those reasons. But strictly speaking, politically speaking, they just look at what he's doing, and it's just so asymmetrical that it doesn't register. And now I'm not saying that what he's doing is any kind of indication that he's going to win. This asymmetry, this ideological revolution that he is, I would say, successfully bringing about. Now, we argue about how big the revolution is, but is not necessarily going to translate into electoral victory. It could. I think that he does actually have a chance. I'd hesitate to say it was a decent one, but in any event, you know, if you look, I've read so many articles where they just say, look, the political formula doesn't allow him to win. That's not really true. He can always get more votes. But what is true is that it's so out of line to just be consistently principled and not throw out a bone to your political masters or your constituents or whoever it is that you need to, that it just doesn't register, and so they can't conceive. And these are, and it may seem to me or you or a regular person and see, why not? Why can't he just get more votes? Well, because these people have spent their lives, their livelihood, in as politicos, as people playing this game. It doesn't. They have a hard time digesting material outside of it. And like I said, if they do it long enough, they become evil. There's a really good podcast on Lou Rockwell. He interviewed a guy this spring. It was a guy, he was a conservative Republican kind of guy, but a very consistent one. And this guy has known Dick Cheney basically for a long time. Not as friends, but this guy was active in the Republican Party, so was Cheney. And he says he remembers Cheney going back to the late 40s, early 50s. And he says, you know, you start when you're a young guy, you get in there, and what you want is power, what you want is victory, and so you are always working on campaigns, and you're always thinking, how are you going to win the election? How are you going to win the election? How are you going to get that appropriations? And eventually, and you know, so all you're thinking about all day is how to manipulate people, how to get your way, one way or another, how to live off of coercion, because obviously politicians are never ever, you know, consensually making something or producing. They're, you know, expropriating and reappropriating the stolen goods. But anyway, after 40 years of doing that, you know, he becomes a Sith. You know, he becomes Emperor Palpatine or Darth Vader. He's lost touch with humanity, his own and the rest of us. And not every single person who is political gets that far, because they all haven't been doing it that long. They all haven't been doing it that successfully or that intensely. But they go down that path, and they lose touch with anything that doesn't. And it's true with anybody. I mean, you spend your life in a job, you're going to start seeing the world through that, you know, through that light, you know, or in that case, that darkness. So I hesitate to say this group hates Ron Paul per se, although they may hate him because they fall into the conservative or liberal camp. But they can't comprehend him, and so they won't give him his due. Whether that matters in the end remains to be seen.